You do. Oh, you do. Oh, you do. I do. I do love turkey. Yes. We're back. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. Happy, happy, happy Thanksgiving. Welcome back to the live show. It is boy Genesis. Welcome, welcome. I think we are currently live. All right, we are live on. All right. All right, with that being said, the title for today's stream is Happy Thanksgiving, America. I am sending you love and hugs, and my daughter says kisses. All right. All right. All right. All right. With that being yes. Okay. So, this is a message from the 47th president elect Donald J. Trump. He says, Happy Thanksgiving to all, including to the radical left lunatics who have worked so hard to destroy our country, but who have miserably failed and will always fail because their ideas and policies are so hopelessly bad that the great people of our nation just gave a landslide victory to those who want to make America great again. Don't worry, guys, says the president elect. Don't worry. Our country will soon be respected, productive, fair, and strong, and you will be more than ever before proud to be an American. I'm proud to be an American. At least I know I'm free. You know what time it is? Yes, 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 y'all. Yes, that was a message from the president elect Donald J. Trump. He's saying, Don't worry, guys, you will be more than ever before proud to be an American. All right, let's. All right, so we've heard the message from the president elect Donald J. Trump. Now let's listen to a message from the vice president of the United States and Doug. This is a message from Doug and the president of the United States. This is a message from Doug, who happens to be the husband of the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. So, this right here is a message from the vice president of the United States concerning Thanksgiving. Let's get it.
Greetings, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving.
Today we come together to reflect on what we are thankful for and to share our appreciation for one another. Surrounded by family, friends, and those we cherish, we cook our favorite recipes, we share family stories, serve those in need, and give thanks for our blessings.
On Thanksgiving, we also express our gratitude as a nation for our service members and their families who sacrifice so much to protect our nation and our most sacred values.
We are truly grateful for their service.
So again, from our family to yours,
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Shout out to Doug and Kamala Harris. That was adorable. Let's watch it one more time.
Greetings, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving.
Today we come together to reflect on what we are thankful for and to share our appreciation for one another. Surrounded by family, friends, and those we cherish, we cook our favorite recipes, we share family stories, serve those in need, and give thanks for our blessings.
On Thanksgiving, we also express our gratitude as a nation for our service members and their families who sacrifice so much to protect our nation and our most sacred values.
We are truly grateful for their service.
So again, from our family to yours,
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Okay, shout out to Doug and shout out to the Vice President Kamala Harris. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. It is what it is. We are going to unite the country. We're not gonna separate, divide. This is Thanksgiving. We're gonna, spread love, spread joy, spread unity because it is what it is. Happy Thanksgiving 2024. God bless you, the United States.
Well, incoming border czar Tom Homan tells us that he has been the target of death threats since taking on, accepting the new role under President-elect Trump. He joins us now. Tom, couple of things. Not had the chance to congratulate you on your appointment, your nomination. So my heartfelt congratulations to you. Second of all, I'm so sorry to hear that you and your family are going through this. What's your preliminary response to hearing that it's not unique to you? Other senior incoming officials are also facing threats today.
Well, first of all, I appreciate what Nicole just said, but I'll be honest with you, I have not taken this serious up to this point. Now that I know what's happening in the last 24 hours, I will take it a little more serious. But look, I've been dealing with this when I was the ICE director in the first administration. I had numerous death threats. I had a security detail with me all the time. Even after I retired, the death threats continued. And even after I retired as the ICE director, I had U.S. Marshals protection for a long time to protect me and my family. And what doesn't help is all the negative press around the president and people he's putting in his cabinet. Me, I'm not in the cabinet, but, I've read numerous hit pieces on me. I'm a racist and, I'm the father of family separation, all this other stuff. So the hate media doesn't help at all because there are some nuts out there that will take advantage. So that doesn't help. And I thought we're beyond that after the election's over, that we're going to get beyond that. But I will now start taking a little more serious after I just heard what's happened the last 24 hours. Up to that point, I was the attitude that if I'm not home, my family's not home. And they're not home right now, but when I return home, I'm going to bring them home. But I was up the attitude lately that if you want some, come get some. Because, I've been through this many, many times. And but again, what I've learned today, I'll start taking a little more serious.
Do you think that there's a role you can play once you're in position and come January 20th? Do you think there's a role that you can play with your leadership and seniority in the second term of President Trump's administration that can help to sort of bring an end to these kinds of threats that we've been seeing now, as you mentioned, against Republican officials and Democratic officials?
Well, I think the first role is not to be intimidated. I'm not going to be intimidated by these people. They're not going to silence me. Look, I'm going to do this job. I want to do this job because it's an issue of national security. So you're not going to shut me up. I'm not going away, and I'm going to do this job, and I'm going to continue talking to the American people.
Why is there even threat back to the people Trump has decided to work with? His cabinet, border czar. These are people that the president-elect, the 47th, has decided to work with. It's only wise to let them do their jobs. This isn't what we want. This is not what the United States need. We want peace, we want unity, and we want togetherness to accomplish the unthinkable for the next 4 years. If you want to change the economy, change the border, change foreign policies, everybody has to come together and work.
Why it needs to be done. I think under the Trump administration, I think we're going to be very transparent because the big issue, right, securing the border and doing this deportation operation. We're going to be very transparent. We're going to tell the American people exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it. So we're going to control the narrative, and we're going to educate the American people why this is necessary. You can't, on the heels of a historic illegal immigration crisis where 9 out of 10 of these people enter the country illegally, will end up with an order removal because they simply don't qualify for asylum. There has to be a big deportation operation. That's the laws of this country. And if we go through this whole process and 9 out of 10 get an order removal from a judge and we don't remove them, You're never going to fix the border because we'll send a whole message to the whole world. You can enter the states illegally, it's a crime. You can even go to court or not go to court and get an order removal from a federal judge, and you don't leave, and we're not going to make you leave. You're never going to solve the crisis on the border, and it's just not about illegal immigration. When you overwhelm the Border Patrol like they've been overwhelmed for the last 4 years, that's when the fentanyl comes in and kill 250,000 Americans. That's why sex trafficking is up 600%. That's why we have a record number of people on terrorist watch lists crossing the border. That's why you got 31% of women getting sexually assaulted making that journey. Children die in the border almost every night. So it's important that we be very transparent in what President Trump's going to do. We're going to secure the border. We're going to have a deportation operation, and we're going to work really hard to find those 300,000 children. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to tell that story.
Do you think it makes a difference, Tom, if, and this is not confirmed, the FBI is not sharing anything publicly right now about the source of these threats, who is making them? So we don't know if they were.
Yeah, Tom Homan isn't playing around. This is something that I know for a fact everybody now sees. He's not playing around. He's saying there is no playing around. We're going to do our job regardless of the threat. We're going to make sure we fix the border. We make sure nobody gets assaulted. We make sure nobody gets abused. We make sure nobody gets all of these bad things that they're going through by just trying to cross the border, and especially the kids. Especially the kids. So it is what it is. Tom Homan, people say his face looks like the border wall. Let me know. Let me know in the chat. Does his face look like the border wall?
Coming from domestic actors, foreign actors, but I talked with Trey earlier in the show about how Iran is being investigated and prosecuted now for threats against the incoming president's life. Will it make a difference, do you think, to how the U.S. government responds to these threats if they are coming from Americans or foreigners?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's our duty. I think we need to do that. I haven't received this level of threats in the last few days myself. So I'm shocked at what happened in the last 24 hours. Again, I haven't received that level of threat, but I think the government, if they find out it's coming from a foreign nation, of course we got to respond to them. This isn't acceptable for Republican or Democrat. I mean, no one that serves their country should be under threat. I mean, this is the second time I come back from retirement because I'm a border guy. The border's out of control. This is the biggest national security threat in our nation's history. So the president asked me to serve. I'm going to serve with pride and dignity. So I think we need to have a strong response once they find out who's behind all this. Absolutely, it's illegal to threaten someone's life, and we need to follow through with that.
Well, we wish you all the best and your family over the holidays. We hope that this gets put to rest pretty quickly. And thank you for taking time with us today, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There you go. There you have it. There you have it. Tom Homan is like, if it's coming from other countries, then it has to be responded to. But if it's not, then who are the people who, is behind it here in the United States? Because at the end of the day, you want to secure the United States. You want to secure the people. You want to secure everybody that is being called to serve. And look, everybody needs to come together now. This is the time to come together and make America great again. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. Okay? Thank you for tuning into the live show. It is your boy, Genesis. Smash the like button, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel.
A dispute between the president-elect of the U.S. and Mexico's president over a phone call. Who agreed to what and what it may mean for the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Donald Trump brought out some of his best words, for example, wonderful, to describe a conversation with Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, ending his Truth Social post by claiming she agreed to, quote, stop migration through Mexico and into the United States. Sheinbaum actually just responded moments ago, and the short version is never, no, not once, did she say anything of the kind. Sheinbaum on X was writing, we reiterate that Mexico's position is not to close borders, but to build bridges between.
These people right here are the ones who are going to probably make it hard to make a deal. But Nobody really believes them anyway.
Governments and between peoples. Joining us in our fifth seat, CNN media correspondent Hadass Gold. But first, we're going to go to Lance on this breaking news because it does kind of feel familiar from Trump 45. These initial kind of back and forth phone calls, interactions with other world leaders that sort of we hear one version of it and then we hear another version of it.
Yeah, I think the big difference is Donald Trump has got a pretty big mandate, particularly when it comes to this border and getting fentanyl under control in this country. So that, to me, is the big difference from 2017. And I don't think that any country, Mexico especially, should underestimate Americans' tolerance for when it comes to getting the border under control and to getting fentanyl under control. I can remember being on the campaign trail. You meet families who they've lost children to this fentanyl. It is an epidemic across this country. And look, if you look back at the polling, the border was the number 2 issue consistently in every single poll. Donald Trump was leading.
But this isn't a debate here about whether or not it needs to be done. It's him telling telling us that a world leader said it was going to be closed. You probably remember this from the first round of Trump, right? Where we would find out there was a very beautiful phone call and maybe we'd hear another version of the call.
And one thing that always stuck out to me in those years was hearing from the reporters who covered Trump. I think Maggie Haberman said this well. Whenever she was reporting on something that happened in Trump world, she would sort of take what everybody would say and would almost put it through a cheesecloth and try to get through the truth of what came out of that, the sort of what was alike in all of those statements to try to get to the truth. Because often we would hear of these differing sort of statements from different world leaders, from what the president would say, from what the world leaders would say. And that was sort of the difficulty in covering Trump, but also made it a bit more, I guess, chaotic and exciting in certain ways.
So also fascinating that Sheinbaum, who's a relatively new leader, used X.
Yeah, when I first read this earlier this evening, I was hoping it was true, right? I was hoping that all these things that were in there, fentanyl and a great relationship with the Mexico president, but history's a great predictor of the future. And Donald Trump does this too often. He splashes magic pixie dust on the page, and it really doesn't come to be true. And we need to take this serious. This mandate from the voters was we've got to take the border serious. But I really look at this as a two-pronged issue. We can't just take the border seriously without talking about immigration, right? I just don't think we can have that honest conversation. And if Donald Trump just hones this moment and he focuses in on trying to figure out where those illegal folks that are here, that are committing crimes, where they're at, then we can actually have a substantive conversation. But instead, he's just going to gallivant around and act like he's playing global pit boss.
Anyone else?
No, I think that that's true. And Trump is trying to rule with a stick and not a carrot. And we've seen this time and time again. He is out here trying to strong arm a leader, particularly a female leader. And he is known for saying things that, quite frankly, are not true. We'll never see the transcript of that call. We'll never, you can say it's he said, she said, but we've seen time and time again where Trump will say something that happened in a call that is absolutely not true about that call. What we know from Mexico is that, quite frankly, they have not been good faith partners when it comes to immigration reform or reductions at the border or being honest about the fentanyl crisis or the caravans or anything else. Like, they have just not been helpful. But I do think that with this, with Donald Trump being president again, he has the opportunity to try to bridge some of this. He has the opportunity to be honest, not like he was about the border wall, which he said that they agreed to pay for and they didn't do that either. He has the opportunity to actually work and ensure that we do get to some resolution.
A leader is a leader. Say it one more time. A leader is a leader. If you decide to lead the country and you happen to be a woman or you happen to be a man, nobody cares. You are a leader. So there's no particularly a leader. She's a female leader, a female president. She is the president of Mexico. So nobody cares if she's female or if he's male. You are the number one thing is you are the president. You are the leader. So stop. Now she's about to play the game that, okay, well, he's going to talk to her like that. He's going to lie like that because she's a woman. Always identity politics, always race politics with these folks. Always. They never just mess it up. They never prove me wrong. They do the same thing every time.
But honestly, this is going to come from Congress as well. When we talk about the crime, we have to be honest about the fact that a lot of the crime stats that Donald Trump has pushed out in the Republican Party have, quite frankly, been lies. The numbers aren't nearly as big as he would like to say that they are. And when we talk about the fentanyl crisis, we have to be honest that a lot of Americans are driving the fentanyl crisis, not people across the border.
But I think the thing that's intriguing me is you have two new leaders and you have a world that is far more sort of familiar with the tactics of a Donald Trump, right? Like now you know if you go into a room with him what you can or should do after you leave that room if you're another world leader.
All of these leaders negotiate through media to some degree. So we should separate the public statements from what's probably going on behind the scenes. They may be testing each other to see how they react to Trump's characterization of the meeting, because that's a sign of whether his leverage is working behind the scenes. So I don't think you should read too much into these public statements, because at the end of the day, this is just a negotiation. It's brinkmanship.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, no one was on this phone call, so no one knows exactly what happened. But that, to my original point, the one thing he comes in with is, to me, a lot more of a mandate. And I just think the folks in Mexico need to be thinking long and hard about what he's willing to do, especially as somebody who doesn't have to run for office.
She has her own mandate, right? Those are the dynamics we don't know anything about.
Absolutely. I get it. She needs to talk tough. But I mean, I think this is an issue where the American people are lock solid. And they're
the Americans that voted for him in the middle are expecting him to do something, not just build 20 miles of a wall for a selfie station.
Bakari, I mean, it was interesting when Trump came out with that post. He made it sound as though he had solved the immigration crisis and what's happening down at the border. And the president of Mexico had a very different characterization.
Yeah, and I just think that this is going to be somewhat typical of the next 4 years of the Trump administration. It's something that we see on X a lot, which has really become this kind of very, very, in terms of intellectual honesty, very shallow. But President Sheinbaum, in her response, ran circles around the incoming 47th president of the United States, talking about the agreements that Mexico has already made and the reduction that we've seen of border crossings and the things they're already doing. And she's going to be more than a formidable foe for Donald Trump. But I would tell people who are watching, and sometimes we don't do this, but Donald Trump is going to claim credit and then send a tweet out without actually doing anything, and claiming some victories or success. That is who he is, and that's who he's always been. He has not solved anything yet, although he's claimed victory. And so this is going to be something that's happening. And this is why journalism matters and people like you matter, Jim, because you're going to have to turn the page and be able to show people that, look, I mean, just because you tweet it and say it doesn't mean anything. I tweet the fact that I should be in the NBA all the time, but I ain't there.
Yeah, I would love that too. I would love to be in the NBA. But Scott, let me ask you, does this mean that if we start to see, migration coming across the border during a second Trump term, that means that this tweet from him this post is no longer operative? What does that mean? Does that mean he didn't solve it or she didn't solve it? What does that mean?
I'll tell you what this whole thing means to me. First of all, it was interesting to hear Bakari describe the president of Mexico as a formidable foe. I don't think we ought to have to think of Mexico as a foe, although we currently should, because they've been a terrible neighbor. And I think he got her attention this week with his threat of tariffs. And she clearly hopped on the phone with him. And that's a good thing. She needs to pay attention to Donald Trump. And they need to pay attention to the United States. They have an important economic relationship with us, but they've been a terrible neighbor. And they do need to do more in terms of migration and drugs. This poison comes across the border.
And this guy is absolutely right. They're not a foe. They're not supposed to be categorized as foes. No, they're supposed to be our neighbors, not foes. And you're supposed to do your duties, your responsibilities as a neighbor. You should protect your border, same as the United States should protect their border. Like, why would you say she's a formidable foe and Trump is going to have to do more than usual this time? No, that shouldn't be the case. But of course, this is the mainstream media. And this guy is not even the president of the United States. Keep in mind, the president of the United States today, 28th of November 2024, is Joe Biden. Trump is the 47th president-elect, and he will not be president until January. Don't forget that. And yet, he's making deals already. Man, you got to love some Trump, man. You got to love you some Trump.
It kills Americans. And so I'm glad they talked. And I know that they're both doing their own public posturing for their own political purposes. But they have an important role to play. And I don't think they've done near enough to do what they can do to help the United States solve this crisis. So we'll see how that turns out. But there's a lot of things yet to happen. Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and he's already got the attention of both Mexico and Canada in a way that I don't think Joe Biden ever did.
But Lee, I guess, well, Bakari, if you want a quick response to that.
Oh, it's Lee's show. I think that irresponsible fiscal policy is something that we'll be able to discuss for a long period of time. If anybody thinks 25% tariffs on anything is good policy, and yes, she is a formidable foe. It's a colloquialism that means somebody who's going to be able to go back and forth with the president.
Man, Bakari didn't chill, bro. You didn't chill because it's facts. It is facts. Canada, Mexico, everybody's on board trying to make a deal with President-elect 47th, the Don, the legend, Donald Trump. But this guy still want to argue.
President of the United States, not any type of other characterization, but Scott knows that.
And Leah, I guess just to go back to you finally on this. I mean, the flip side of this is that when Trump comes into office, if these tariffs do go into effect, I mean, the president of Mexico has threatened to retaliate. We could have a trade war at the beginning of this new administration, which could have a pretty serious effect on inflation in this country. And that's what a lot of economic experts are saying right now. What do you think?
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is a little bit of saber rattling and a little bit of, I think, to Scott and Bakari's point, is a little bit of posturing. And that the ultimate outcome is that nobody really wants a trade war. Nobody wants a tariff war. Nobody wants to be, clearly the American public was very, very open and
7% of their exports. Think about this. If Mexico was on a trade war with the United States, 87% of their export is to the United States. 87% of their export goes to the United States. So there's just no way they're surviving a trade war with the United States when 87% of your export goes to the United States. 80% plus goes to the United States. So how do you want to survive a trade war with the United States? It's like big brother, little brother conversation.
To effect roughly around 2019 from earlier tariffs that were put into place that the Biden administration didn't overturn, but also contributed and gotten worse due to the global pandemic. So I honestly think that part of what this is designed to do is to create, a leverage moment, a moment of negotiation. And they're putting the cards on the table before Donald Trump has even gotten into office. What I would really be curious to see ultimately is where the negotiation ends up. In large part because Donald Trump does not want massive inflation. He just doesn't. It's not a politically good thing. It's also economically not a good thing. So what does the actual breakdown look like in the end?
Okay, just to get the right number for you. So according to World Integrated Trade Solutions here, and this was actually in 2022, so I got to get you the most recent one. It says Mexico exports to the United States worth $452 million plus, with a partner share of 78.29%. Mexico export to the United States. So 78.29% is what they export to the United States from Mexico. So you need the United States. You need the United States. It's just, I got the new one for 2024. Mexico is now the largest. This is according to BBVA research. It says Mexico is now the largest exporter to the United States. Mexico, this was updated in March 14th, 2024. Mexico imports of goods 2023 American accounted for 83.3% of Mexican export. So they're exporting 83.3% of Mexican goods to the United States. You can't win a trade war with the United States. Sorry, Mexico.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg had a private meeting with the president-elect today at Mar-a-Lago. This was just confirmed by Trump aide Stephen Miller. Now, Zuckerberg did not endorse either candidate during the election, but did tell Bloomberg in an interview that Trump standing up and pumping his fist, telling crowds to fight, fight, fight after the first assassination attempt was, quote, one of the most.
And the outcome of this election obviously is not what we wanted. It is not what we worked so hard for. But I am proud of the race we ran.
Tonight, Kamala Harris not looking very joyous, delivering a pre-Thanksgiving message to her supporters, and critics are calling it a real turkey. Harris is awkwardly advising them to protect their power.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire.
Okay, this as Harris's aides are now crying foul, blaming everything from headwinds, trans ads, even swing states were part of the problem during a podcast postmortem.
It's really hard for Democrats to win battleground states.
We had discussions with Joe Rogan's team. Ultimately, we just weren't able to find a date. She had tremendous loyalty to President Biden. I hate to repeat this over and over, but it was a very short race with a limited number of days.
Being up again.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg had a private meeting with the president-elect today. Mar-a-Lago. This was
My mic was off. Oh my lord. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Okay, we're not gonna do this today. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful, okay. It looks like Zuckerberg had a private meeting with Trump, and this was the guy that took away Trump's page, an account on Instagram and Facebook. Remember? But now he has said, you know what? I think this guy isn't that bad, okay? And taking down an account of a sitting president is just outrageous.
just confirmed by Trump aide Stephen Miller. Now, Zuckerberg did not endorse either candidate during the election, but did tell Bloomberg in an interview that Trump standing up and pumping his fist, telling crowds to fight, fight, fight after the first assassination attempt was, quote, one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. Back with us, Maggie Haberman, who reported that story for the New York Times. So, Maggie, what more can you tell us about this meeting between the president-elect and Mark Zuckerberg?
So we're still learning about it, John. It was earlier today. Zuckerberg may still be there. Zuckerberg showed up in Florida with some of his advisors. It's not clear that whether Zuckerberg saw at this meeting or Trump saw at this meeting, but one person described it as Trump essentially saying, hey, why don't you come over to Mar-a-Lago? And as you said, Zuckerberg had expressed praise for Trump earlier this year for his defiant posture after he was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania by a would-be assassin. It's interesting, a couple of things about this. You know, clearly Zuckerberg wants to have a better relationship with Trump. Zuckerberg, once upon a time, was a funder of an immigration advocacy group. Stephen Miller is Trump's one of his most powerful advisors, and also the person who largely drives or shares with Trump his hardline immigration agenda. And so it's really interesting hearing Stephen Miller talking about this meeting on television earlier. I think we will learn more, but we are seeing, as with a number of industries, but certainly the tech industry, a lot of people coming to Trump and not the other way around.
That Miller-Zuckerberg dynamic, really interesting to note that. So other than these meetings, right, I mean, Trump has by and large filled out a lot of his administration way quicker than he did in 2016. Mm-hmm. So the question now is, what does he do with December, for instance? Do you have any sense of how he plans to spend his time?
Golfing, meeting with people at Mar-a-Lago. I think enjoying the time that he's still in Florida before he comes back to Washington, which has never been a city he especially loves. I think, is it possible he will take a trip somewhere? It's possible, but I don't think there's any plans to at the moment. I think the goal was to try to get as many of these positions in place as possible for a variety of reasons. But one is so that hearings, assuming that they don't get recess appointments and the Senate to recess and then shove a lot of these more controversial nominees through, which I think is not likely. It's still possible. I just think it's not likely at the moment. Assuming there are hearings and Senate confirmation hearings, the goal is to get those done pretty fast so that Trump can hit the ground running once he gets in office. That is part of the goal for this breakneck pace. It's also to avoid some of the jockeying that you had in the 2016 transition. It's not to say there has not been a lot of internal knife fighting in this one, because there has. It's just been different.
All right, Maggie, stick around. I want to bring back Scott Jennings and former Democratic Congressman Mondaire Jones. Scott, let's just start with this Mark Zuckerberg meeting. What do you make of it?
Well, not surprised that he would want to go see the president-elect, and I'm not surprised Donald Trump would want to see him, too. I mean, these are two of the most powerful people in the world, and they can probably help each other with a tremendous amount of stuff, whether it's of a policy nature or information distribution nature. So, I'm glad to see, though, that people are going, and what this tells me is there's some acceptance that Donald Trump is the president-elect and that he's going to be our president come January. I remember back in 2016, it just felt like there was this sort of immediate resistance to Trump, that there was a lot of external and internal resistance to him. I don't really sense that this time around, and I see world leaders engaging with Trump. I see Mark Zuckerberg engaging with Trump. This is a good thing. We may have a couple of years of political peace in this country if this kind of these kinds of things keep up.
I'm going to clip and save that comment from you right there, Scott, and play it back to you in 6 to 8 months. We'll see if it still holds.
Please do.
Congressman, is the Democratic Party losing Silicon Valley? It really does seem like more and more Silicon Valley executives and insiders are at least going out of their way to, if not meet with the president, at least president-elect, praise him.
Like, I think if Kamala Harris had won the election, Mark Zuckerberg would be going to pay homage to her, too. He's got a significant policy interest in this. Having served on the antitrust subcommittee in Congress, I know that regulating the world's largest tech companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon, is one of those rare areas of bipartisan consensus. Republicans want to do it for different reasons. They think that these companies are censoring conservative speech. Democrats typically want to do it, regulation that is, because they think that these companies have been anti-competitive in the marketplace. And so I think it behooves him from a business standpoint to visit with Donald Trump. This is very different, by the way, from Joe Scarborough going down to Mar-a-Lago and bending the knee after cultivating a brand for himself as someone who's going to stand up to Donald Trump, who poses an existential threat to our democracy. That's just hypocrisy.
Well, looks like the Silicon Valley billionaires just keep on walking through Mar-a-Lago. Tonight, it was Mark Zuckerberg's turn. The Meta CEO went down there to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. A Meta spokesperson confirmed it, said it was Trump who invited Zuckerberg, and that Zuckerberg was, quote, grateful for the meeting. Just remember, Facebook booted Trump off the platform after January 6th, before then reinstating his account in 2023. The two have had...
That guy just called the president-elect an existential threat to democracy, which, what does that even mean now at this point in time? This guy is the president-elect, the 47th. Why are you still going back as if you guys are still campaigning? So you're going to call it a legitimate president of the United States that was elected by the popular votes, by the Electoral College. You're still going to call him an existential threat to democracy? Really? These people are just sore losers.
Just call it a rocky relationship, to say the least. Well, joining me now is CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Brad Todd, and former special assistant to President Biden, Megan Hayes. Glad to see you both this evening. Brad, they've had a bit of a contentious relationship, Trump and Zuckerberg. Trump actually once threatened to have him jailed, if we can all recall that. So what's it all about? Why this meeting?
One phrase and three numbers, Section 230. The social media giants currently are protected from liability suits based on Section 230. Media companies could be sued if they say things that defame other people, but social media companies cannot.
Because they're a platform that just basically is like, I'm hosting you, but it's not responsible
That's
for what
correct.
you say.
That's correct. However, Mark Zuckerberg and many other platforms began curating people, as we all know, which deciding what stays on the platform, what doesn't. A lot of Republicans in Congress, people like Josh Hawley, think that means they should be liable. If you're making decisions about the content on your platform, that means you're not just neutrally hosting it, then you should not have that special liability protection. With Republicans in charge, both the White House and Congress, I think Section 230 reform is on the agenda. And Mark Zuckerberg, he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of that.
It's part of what the incoming FCC or nominee has focused on in previous writings as well, the idea of Section 230, and this accusation that there has been censorship by those who hold these platforms. So what would stand out about Trump's having a friendly relationship with, say, Mark Zuckerberg? He already certainly has one with Elon Musk.
I mean, I think this is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Like, I think this is beneficial for Mark Zuckerberg to go down there. They had a really tumultuous relationship in his first term. And I think it's smart for him to go down there just for the reasons you're mentioning. But this is a massive place of media for him. This is another way that Trump can reach voters where they are. But it also, Zuckerberg needs him on his side. They need to get along. And so I think this is trying to mend the relationship that they didn't have in his first term.
I mean, Congress has tried to do this, though. I mean, the idea of Trump talking to Mark Zuckerberg and that would solve the issue might be farcical to the members of Congress who've been trying to not only understand technology, but also to try to reform Section 230 and bring it up to sort of congressional code, so to speak. Then you've got people like Elon Musk, though, Brad, literally posting and putting federal workers on notice on X that he wants to fire some of them. He actually named, I think, 4 relatively unknown employees, examples of people that he actually does want to fire. Why would he do that as a way of promoting perhaps the DOJ department?
Well, of course, Elon Musk is not going to have any official authority in this White House. It's outside the government that the DOJ is going to operate. I think in the end...
You think that's true, though? He seems to have a lot of influence.
I think it's influence. Influence, but not authority. Those are two different things. I think he does have a lot of influence, and I think that in the end, the DOJ is going to end up focusing not on individual people, but on more structural reforms. For instance, we have spent $42 billion on Joe Biden's broadband program that hasn't signed anybody up on the internet. They spent tons to build 17 charging stations for electric vehicles. Those are the kind of wasteful government programs that are going to be either contracted out to providers who could do it, or right-sized, or maybe even move some of those departments out of Washington. But I think it'll be macro picture before all said and done.
But macro would be what you said. The micro would be naming individuals. Why take that route then?
I don't think he should. I think we've seen in the last 24 hours all of these people who have been swatted and who have had bomb threats at their house that are now public figures. I mean, they've been public figures but are being named. These are people who either are political appointees or civil servants that are being named in an unfair way. Elon Musk seems to have a vendetta or personal issues with them or what their offices are doing. So it's not appropriate for him to be doing that. But I do agree that they should be looking at the government holistically and not at individual people.
No one's house should be swatted. No one's should be in their driveway.
That it goes without saying.
You know who agrees with that? Elon Musk thought that when they were tracking his flights. He was particularly perturbed about that and not having sort of privacy, it's befuddling to think of why he would do that. But also, you've got longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon telling Puck's Peter Hamby that Musk was the deciding factor in Trump's win, saying, to be brutally frank, it's the reason we won. Do you agree with that?
I agree with Steve Bannon on very little, but I'm going to halfway agree with him on this.
Really?
I think that one of the key demographics for Trump that he improved on versus last time was with younger men. And I think a lot of younger men see Elon Musk as a disruptor, and they see that he's changed a lot of industries that they find relevant to their life. John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, the Democrat, said that a lot of young men saw in him Tony Stark, the Marvel hero. And so Elon Musk is kind of that mysterious, superhero person to some people. So I think it was more important the endorsement than Oprah, and maybe a more important endorsement than Taylor Swift in this presidential campaign. So I might buy Steve Bannon's argument on this.
I mean, this is facts because I said this a couple of weeks ago. Elon Musk played a big role in electing Donald J. Trump as the 47th president-elect. However, Trump was already going to win, really. It's a combination of everything. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Joe Rogan, Dana White, the influencers, Aiden Ross, the young influencers, Theo Vaughn. It's a huge amount of influx of people who just wanted Trump to win, and everybody worked together. So it's like it's not just Elon Musk. Elon Musk is just like an icing on the cake. He's like the Iron Man, the Batman of the Republican Party now, because he just kind of like you know came along and just said, you know what, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this to win, because everybody knows this man has changed the game for electric cars, for space travel, for the internet, Starlink, a lot of things he's done. So he's been a big proponent of the new age technology and just new age lifestyle, basically.
Patrick, let's start with that idea. When people, if there are such people who say that they need a liberal Joe Rogan, what do you think they actually mean when they say that?
Well, I think the short answer is they do need a new Joe Rogan. The question is, what does that look like? And I don't know if it's you can actually create it. Apparently a lot of Republicans were creating some of these podcasters and so on. So now the mainstream media has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if it's so much about who the person is or if there is a person, it's where they're getting their message to and how they're getting it out there. Because obviously, as Joe Rogan himself said, everybody's getting their information from their phone. So where are you going to get that now? You can go on X like I do all the time and you get it from all sides there. But I think for the Democrats, they need to find a way to get their message out to the people that they didn't get it out to.
Misha, I see you ready to jump here.
I agree with that. I think it is more an understanding of the new ecosystem, where people are getting their media messages from. We know that a lot of it is digital, it's social media. People aren't picking up the newspaper anymore.
Did, right? They TikTok their way through the coconut summer. And
nobody cared about the coconuts. I think that it was a misreading of the electorate, but also a misreading of where people are getting their information. But in addition to that, it is not one person. I think that, Joe Rogan has had more lives than cats when it comes to changing it up. I grew up seeing Joe Rogan, have people eat testicles of animals and crawl through the darkness when he was doing Fear Factor. Then he did MMA, and now he's doing this. The man he shapeshifts a lot. That's not necessarily what is the thing that's bringing people in. What Democrats have to do is figure out ways in which they can get to the podcast that their people are listening to. That means your younger voters, your people of color voters. They're getting a lot of information from things that are not, unfortunately, shows like ours right now, that are not shows of the competitors either. You have to find a way to break through that. And I think that for Democrats, largely, their investments have been in ad buys and campaigns that are focused on media that the young people, that diverse voter just aren't in anymore.
I think Democrats need to find a message first. What is their message to voters? That I don't understand. Do they want to be the far left? Do they want to be moderate? Do they want to be, where do they want to land? I mean, it's so inauthentic to me to hear we need to find our own. How are we going to create somebody out of thin air? First, they need to find a message and figure out who they are, and then figure all that out.
So it wasn't healthcare access. It wasn't housing affordability. It wasn't childcare affordability. It wasn't having assistance in your home for the that sandwich generation. None of those things.
Look, I'm not. Look, you guys are the one arguing all the time on TV and on radio and everywhere else about what the message is. I'm just saying they need to figure out the message. And then,
to be clear, Republicans argue about their message all the time. And I think I grew up with right-wing radio and obviously Rush Limbaugh. There's always been a robust right-wing media ecosystem. And the question I have is, how much of this is actually about audience and what you will allow? Meaning, the campaign didn't let Kamala Harris sit for 3 hours. And I don't think the campaign would have put her in front of Theo Vaughn to talk about his cocaine habit.
Look.
Democrats have a different sense of what's okay to do.
That's actually precisely the point. However, Bernie Sanders.
These guys always want to talk about the past. We're talking about now, when Trump entered into the chat, okay? When Trump entered into the chat, everything changed because this guy is authentic. He tells the American people what they're actually feeling. He's not belittling them. He's not telling them, you guys are not educated. That's why you're voting for Kamala or Joe Biden. Stop going to 1909. This is the new age, okay? This is the recent times. As soon as Trump entered into the political chat, everything changed because this man tells it like it is, and it is hard for people to go back to what they've been fed all these years. Now they know what a political candidate should talk like. should speak like. We want authenticity. We don't want someone who is reading the script, someone who is reading script and just following, campaign handlers, people who handle campaigns and like say, okay, you know what? This is what you should say. This is what you should say. This is what you should say. This is what you shouldn't say. This is a script and this is what they want to hear. No, come out, be authentic. We don't need Hollywood elites to come out and come campaign with you. We want you to tell us what you are going to do for the plumbers, for the farmers, for the construction workers, for the welders, okay, for the carpenters. That's what the people want to hear now. For the truck drivers, nobody cares about your script, okay? Be authentic, know what you're saying, know your work, know the economy, and how you're going to bring this economy back.
Sanders had no problem going on Joe Rogan years ago when Joe Rogan endorsed him. I've been on Rogan's show 3 times. I've probably heard over 100 hours of it in the past decade. A decade ago, Joe Rogan was a Bernie Sanders supporter who would get emotional talking about how important it is to legalize marijuana, who would get emotional talking about how important it is to get Christianity out of politics, in particular on the abortion issue, who had a host of left-wing opinions, including about healthcare. And liberals drove him away by calling him a racist, unearthing jokes he made, calling him a misogynist, really with no evidence.
When you make
calling
racist
him
jokes
a transphobe,
about people of color,
calling him a
people
lot
calling
of
you
comedians
racist is likely
make
going to
jokes
happen.
all the time. Calling him transphobic because he didn't like
He
seeing
also didn't
Fallon
love the
Fox
vaccine thing, right?
beating up.
To our point earlier.
That also used to be a left-wing opinion, to be against vaccines like 20 years ago. Again, so he actually hasn't shapeshifted very much, to your point. The Democratic Party has shapeshifted and driven him away and alienated his followers.
I think what he ended up seeing was an American political sphere that shifted, and he found ways. He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. He found ways to walk into where those people were. Yes, he was a...
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Democratic Party will lose in 2028 and in 2032. They never listen. They never take correction. They always want to argue. They always want to prove that they are right, and they're always right. And they're always right in their opinion. They're always right. Look at the veins on her neck trying to prove a point that she knows she's wrong.
Proud, ultra leftist, and then he became a proud person on the right, largely because he saw shifting towards the right, and that's where his money and his audience could come from. He shifted because more of his listeners shifted, and that's where he drove it to. That's nothing more than consumerism at work.
Which of his beliefs changed in the past 10 years? It's really hard to point out which of his beliefs.
But can I zoom out from him? Because I think there is this, and I see you nodding as well, this kind of bigger question. Like, you have a Jon Stewart, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Pod Save America. You have all kinds of
Conan
even
O'Brien,
the late night, television brigade.
They're all left on the late night shows. I think what he said to me, what rings true about this whole concept of finding the liberal Joe Rogan is, he said, inauthentic. And when you talked about what Kamala Harris did in this campaign, knocking on doors, doing it sort of the traditional way, right? Raising tons of money. But there's something about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, or Joe Rogan or whomever, they are authentic.
Right. Totally.
And that comes through to people. And when you're trying to get your message out, whatever that message is, you have to be authentic.
You
and I
can
think
be
they missed
authentic,
it
though,
this
when you have something like 20, 30 years in the public eye, specifically the tabloids. There's no gaffe. There's no thing that you can be tripped up by. I mean, you're a politician.
Right.
You know what it's like. Very careful campaigns are.
The left needs to find a relevant voice that can live in that exact moment and be that authentic person, not just carrying the party's water.
So what about Pete Buttigieg? I see him everywhere online, and he goes on Fox constantly.
But he's not a Joe Rogan. He's not running a day-to-day.
No, I just
hourly
mean
hour.
like it's possible for figures to go out.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to hit all the boxes. You got to be a good communicator. You got to be relevant. You got to be able to push back. You got to be able to invite guests on that are newsy. But I think at the end of the day, the Democrats need an honest umpire. One of the most damaging parts of this entire campaign.
Say that again, an honest umpire.
An honest umpire
Interested.
to be able to call balls and strikes. And so one of the most detrimental things that Kamala Harris, in my opinion, did during the campaign was when she answered the question, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? She said nothing. Now, I think that was born out of respect for Joe Biden, but it rang in the ears of everybody trying to figure out who they wanted to.
Which the campaign said just this week.
If we want to have a relevant voice in the Democrat ecosystem, you've got to have somebody willing to try to take those steps. One of the things I heard often on the campaign trail in these swing states was, you can respect an audience, but you don't have to overcompensate for an audience. And it felt like so much of the party platform of the Democrats were trying to compensate for parts of the party or parts
this
of the
gets
policy
back to
positions.
the coalition management.
And
type
somebody needs to
argument.
stand up and grab the reins.
We also remember one thing here, because I keep hearing I heard it from you a couple of times, mandate, okay? Donald Trump's gotten almost 77 million votes. He's approaching 77 million. Kamala Harris is approaching 74.5 million. That's a $2.5 million vote difference, which is big, but not huge. So is it really, I mean, I know the Republicans have to always say it's a mandate. Is it really? I mean, that's still a lot of votes that Harris received in this
When you have
campaign.
the Senate and the House, I think that's pretty big voice that the
It was a solid victory, no doubt. Was it a mandate?
I actually want to know, I think X has a role to play in this because there's a little bit of shadow boxing the past activism of the past decade. And by that I mean that when Elon Musk purchased Twitter,
It's a mandate, okay? It is a mandate. That's over 2 million people. Do you know how large a crowd of 2 million people is? It's a mandate, brother.
people were always worried about what would happen on Twitter and the Twitter mobs coming after you and the kind of progressive politics that was able to punch up from Twitter more or less feels disbanded under X. I mean, am I wrong?
And a part of that is because
people
the
are still
algorithm
like,
has-
oh my God, what about this? And
The
I'm like,
algorithm has changed significantly, and a lot of those activist voices have been quelled. Many of them don't pop up in people's regular search engines. Instead, you're hearing a lot more from the right, and part of that is because that's how Elon set it up. He amplifies the voices of the right wing. He amplifies his own voice, and he's trying to ensure that, you know, all voices are not heard equally. And we've seen that time and time again.
But I think that also contributes to maybe the left feeling like they've lost a microphone. And another thing
I think the left just doesn't like what they're hearing. That's why they're all running to this blue sky thing that they want to do now. I think a lot of these people don't want to hear conservative voices. That's the far left. They don't like hearing things. That's part of the problem they had in this last election that we went through, is that when you don't agree with me 100% of the time, well, you're out the door.
Right.
And I think that's what's been happening on X.
Harry Anton on this network reported that X's frequent users now are exactly split between Republican and Democrat. Now, if that's true, that means all of the people on the left leaving X right now are leaving essentially a reflection.
That is the main issue. The far left don't want to hear the conservatives' issues. And it's like, this is why you will lose in 2028. If you don't listen to people, you have to listen to people. Listen to what the voters are talking about. What do the people want? Listen, you are supposed to be public servants, government officials. You're supposed to listen to people. Hey, Jake, what would you like to see in your community? Hey, Stephanie, what do you think the schools need? This is how to have a dialogue with the voters. Don't say they're conservatives. I'm not going to listen to them because I don't believe what they believe, but I'm supposed to be a public servant.
Of the country, because they're not comfortable with the power they used to have on X.
But there wouldn't be right and left media if people didn't kind of flock to their
For me,
their
it just
corners.
feels like it should be the public square. I think those are Elon's words. He referred to Twitter as the public square. It feels like his thumb is on the public square, right? He's influencing it with, like I said earlier, 4 out of the top 10 feeds are coming from Elon Musk. That just
reporting
does
about
not, that
throttling
just
of
doesn't feel
links and
authentic.
things like that. Yeah, which is, I mean, it's interesting. I think that sometimes I think it's too navel-gazy, right? Like it's a media thing, like whether we're on Twitter or not. But you also saw in this last election how much media still matters. It may not be the traditional media the way we think of it, but sitting down and doing a good interview still means something.
Mm-hmm. Wherever you do it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. When you guys took down the president of the United States from being on social media, Twitter to be precise, and now Elon bought it. You had Elon. This is something the left has to understand. Democrats had Elon Musk. They had him. This man has been the wealthiest man for a long time, at least like 3 to 4 years now, probably 5 years. And this guy has been a Democrat for years. And guess what? He bought X and then reinstated. I mean, think about it. He had to reinstate the 45th president of the United States, who is now the 47th president-elect. Man, shout out to Elon Musk, man. Now, Thanksgiving for sure. Are you talking about
Well, I
politics
don't
around the
think
table?
people in our culture right now need extra encouragement to cut people off. I don't know what your impression
Are
has been
you
from your friends and
guys? Are you talking about Thanksgiving around the Thanksgiving? Are you talking about politics around the Thanksgiving table when you're eating your turkey? Huh? Let me know. Are you allowed to talk about politics around the table? Let me know, man.
your families and your communities. But my impression has been that because of social media bubbles, everyone being fed, as we were just talking about, a narrative that is pretty much unique to them and assuming everyone else is in the same bubble as them when actually your family members are potentially seeing a totally different set of facts. You know, the idea that we don't have enough cutting off going right now, so we need to encourage that, is a little crazy to me.
Amisha, I want to ask you, because I think for Democrats in particular, because I've been actually reading up on family estrangement over politics, there are so many aspects of the platform that were also linked to values, right? And so rejection was literally like rejecting, as she suggested, me rather than some political idea. How does that affect that conversation?
I love Sunny Hostin, but I am in disagreement with her in that conversation. As somebody who was born in Chicago but raised in the South, Mississippi, North Florida, went to college in Tennessee, a lot of my friends are conservative. I've sat at conservative tables on holidays for years. And at the end of the day, there is no, we're, food fighting back and forth over who voted for who. And that's just not something that you do. I also think that, we live in integrated communities of politics and ideas. There's conservatives in my own family. And at the end of the day, we're not going to disavow you because you either voted differently or you chose, in many cases, not to vote in this election. That's another vote loss for Kamala. And that's not part of the conversation. So I think that, some people are taking this way too far because this isn't the first election cycle the Democrats have had where they lost. It is what it is. The pendulum swings in both directions. But it's also, your family is your family. And I don't think that you should be someone who distances yourself based on an election or anything of that sort, just because this family is lifelong. It is not that serious.
So you're not doing the protect your peace, mental health. Lance, your face says no.
The view is like Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. So even talking about anything that they say on there just makes me crazy. This is so antithetical.
She actually said something I agree with. I definitely agree with her. Your family's lifelong. Political situations are just 4 years, 8 years in terms. So I agree with her. I never thought I was going to agree with that lady.
To who we are as a country, to who we are in America. We promote family. We should welcome people into our family. We were talking about this before the show. I can't think of a time when I go to my families and we have this big discussion about politics and who voted for who and oh my God, can you miss? So anyway, it's a bunch of nonsense from these folks.
But it doesn't happen that way, right? It's like your brother-in-law makes a little comment and then you're like, why are we here with this guy? And then everyone gets mad. And
Well,
then
that's what we were saying. Those are the people who get-
it's a little more insidious than just
We were saying those are the people who get disinvited.
Right.
You just at the end of the
How
day.
is that different?
Why have we not seen them in a few years?
How is that different?
There are always family issues, right? Whether they're political or whether they're non-political that come up over the holidays. And I think you have to try to put these aside. I mean, we all have to try to move on. I will say that I have, my wife and I have a friend coming over tomorrow who's a member of the gay community who doesn't want to go back to his family in Florida. And that to me, as a friend of his, hurts. It hurts when you hear that because he feels that he's been excommunicated or he can't go and see his family because they voted the other way from what is important to him. So I think we all need to care a little more and be, respectful and also be genuine to our friends and
it can get
welcome
complicated.
people in.
If I took a break from everybody that was a MAGA supporter or a Trump voter,
yeah.
I'd have a pretty
You'd be
lonely
coming to my
Thanksgiving.
house.
I live in an 80-20 county. My county's 80-20 Republican, and certainly an overwhelming majority of my family. And of course, they know I'm probably one of the only Republicans that actually publicly voted for Kamala Harris. But look, I think this speaks to the bigger problem going on in this country. We've let politics wrap itself around our axle. It becomes the most important thing. There's so many great things in our lives, right? I think about my situation. I got a kid who just graduated from college, a kid who's playing football in college, a kid in middle school. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I got great in-laws, a healthy dad.
So all your other
there's
identities
a lot going
that are
on
not...
that should be the last thing. And of course, I'm the last guy that wants to talk about politics. And as you mentioned, the people are really good at kind of they'll get to that. Well, did you hear that? And I try not to take the bait. I know too much. I know too much.
It is the truth. Okay, do not take this too seriously because a lot of people just, they try to talk you down, they belittle you, they shame you for voting for Trump, especially if you're. And they're like, well, especially if you're like me, that was born in Nigeria. I moved here about 7 years ago. I became a United States citizen. It took me 5 years to become a United States citizen. And I voted for President Donald Trump. And now it's like, well, you're an immigrant. You came here. Now you're a citizen of the United States. And you're brown skinned and you want to vote for Trump? Why are you like this? You are going to suffer. You're going to be this. You are illiterate. You are this. You are that. Call me names. You are shameful to your race. You are this. You're that. That's what they do. They call me names because I voted for Trump. So there should not be any sort of division. There shouldn't be any sort of division if you vote for Kamala Harris. I still like you. I'm still going to be your guy. I'm still going to be your child. I'm still gonna talk to you. I'm still gonna chill with you. It's like, why are you being so childish? This is just what it is. We have to do better. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I gotta start my. I gotta go look for the best intro. Maybe it's your boy Genesis. Immigration. All right. Double tap your screen. Double tap your screen twice to like the live show. Double tap your screen twice to like the live show, okay? We gotta like the live show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get the likes up to 100 likes. Let's get 10% of the people watching right now to like the live show. All right, next one.
Although Thanksgiving is an American holiday, the spirit of the day is rooted in our roots as a nation in God and faith. And it's moments like these when I think we need to be introspective, obviously thankful that we are lucky on this show to be able to today seek the counsel of one of the wisest men that I know. Our next guest, Fox News contributor, theologian, Jonathan Morris. I'm always still ready to say father, right? So I'm sure everyone still slips for everyone. But, I want to talk to you. It's so important today because considering just how vitriolic the last year has been. I mean, really, I don't think anyone who's alive has ever seen a political environment that was this vitriolic. Yeah, this person's a bad guy, she's a bad guy, he's a bad guy, but never to this degree where hatred was on the menu. What should be on the menu tomorrow during these Thanksgiving dinners to sort of begin the healing process?
Yeah, and family members who love each other very much have been divided, right? I think tomorrow, and this is not a lack of courage or lack of being honest and truthful and authentic. No, tomorrow is a great time, and these weeks, I would say, is a great time to find what you have in common with the person with whom you disagree and talk about that. Everybody knows where you stand. Right. Everybody knows where you stand. Right. And it's a great time to show respect and love. Think about how respectful God is. If you believe in God, and if we believe in an all-powerful God, how respectful He is, right, of our free will. He's not forcing us to do the right thing, just the opposite. Love. And I think it's a great time, as you propose, to find that common ground.
Do you worry that maybe because America has drifted away from God, whether saying Pledge of Allegiance and things like that in school, or just church and synagogue attendance, those sort of things, that we've replaced politics with a great, as something we believe too much in politics and not enough in other things.
Well, I believe from a human anthropology perspective, in other words, what we as human beings are, we are made for purpose, right? Or even if you don't believe in a God, we have a tendency to be productive, right? To have a purpose. And I would say if you don't have God in your life, and if you don't have faith in your life, you're going to find it, or at least look for it, in something else. Right. I would absolutely agree with you. But on this Thanksgiving Day, let's look back at history. 3 dates real quickly. 1621, 1776, 1861. Look up those dates. Think about the first Pilgrims. Think of George Washington, our first president, and then think of Abraham Lincoln. George Washington, the first president to proclaim a day of Thanksgiving. Abraham Lincoln, after the Civil War, he said it's time to give thanks.
Right.
And he said to the Almighty God.
Right.
It wasn't to the stars. It wasn't to the cosmos. That is a long history that we've had as a nation to recognize that our benefits come from a source outside of ourselves.
Right. What we add 1962 to the list? That's when I was born.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, I thought you were going back to civil rights or something. Thank God for the birth of Charles, brothers and sisters.
So we got less than a minute to go. But listen, again, it's been an amazing year. There's optimism out there, and it feels like, okay, we could seize upon this. We call it in the stock market animal spirits, but is there another name for a period like this, sort of this period of hopefulness that didn't exist maybe 3 weeks ago?
Well, hopefulness for 50% or 51 or 52% of the population, and a lot of angst
but even
for
some
others.
of the people who didn't vote for Trump have come across. I saw YouGov polled earlier this week, and 20 to 30% of young folks who didn't vote for him are now optimistic.
Excellent.
So it feels infectious.
Listen, I think change is always a good thing, especially in Washington, D.C. I heard you say before, hey, go to Washington for 1 term, 2 terms, 3, whatever it is. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Change is a good thing because we don't want anyone to have total power. God has almighty power, and we don't want humans to have absolute power. And that's the gift of freedom, and the gift of democracy.
Jonathan Morris, thank you so much.
Charles, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
1962.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Change is a good thing. You heard him. Change is a good thing. But anyway, let's not promote division. Let's come together as one and prove that we are United States of America.
Let's bring in president of the American Principles Project, Terry Schilling. Terry, admittedly, we do not know where these threats came from, who issued these threats, but how did we reach this point, Terry?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Todd and Carly. I think we reached this point through several different things. I think first and foremost, the insane and hysterical rhetoric from the progressive media outlets in this country has really ratcheted things up. And we saw the assassination attempts, the multiple assassination attempts, and we still have to deal with death threats. But also, I think people like Tom Homan, because they're taking on the drug cartels, the very powerful and dangerous drug cartels from Mexico, I think that there's probably a lot of threats there. And so we have to get this job done. We have to follow through. We have to make sure that these drug cartels know that we're serious and that we're coming for them and that we're not going to be intimidated.
Yeah, and you know, if you think about the people who were targeted, Elise Stefanik has a 3-year-old baby. Pete Hegseth in his X post said that his 7 children were asleep when police came over to his house and told him and his wife that there was a credible bomb threat. And I think we need to stop this before events like this become the norm and don't shock the public conscience where people say, oh, a death threat to a public official, that happens all the time. But unfortunately, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe does feel like this is just an everyday occurrence. Listen to this.
This has become a very, very common aspect of life for really anyone who is in a high profile or even remotely controversial position. It's been going on for years.
And now he's being accused of downplaying this threat despite being a former member of the FBI. Do you think that was his intention? And what do you feel about those comments?
Look, I think that these are very serious threats. I think that the FBI needs new leadership. These people are all over the place. But at the end of the day, the reason that this is becoming a regular thing with these death threats against public officials is because it's becoming a regular thing to call each other Nazis and the worst names in the books, every type of bigotry, racist, homophobic, transphobic, all this stuff. It just needs to be toned down. And I think you'll start to see people getting back to their lives and back to normalcy.
Yeah, this absolutely cannot be the norm going forward. It's not how we run America. Meantime, Terry, file this under, well, that was quick. Trump says Mexico will stop the flow of migrants after speaking with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, Pardo, full name, this following the tariff threats. The president-elect posted the new president of Mexico. She has agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our...
Shout out to Trump. Trump says, just had a wonderful conversation with the new president of Mexico, Claudia Pardo. She has agreed to stop migration through Mexico. But according to people, they're saying, according to her, she tweeted back, just listen, man. She tweeted back and said, no, that's not what we said. What is going on here?
Southern border. We also talked about what can be done to stop the massive drug inflow into the United States. Look, you never want to say game, set, match this soon, but this is a huge step in the right direction, right, Terry?
No, I think that's right. And I think that these foreign leaders that President Trump dealt with in his first term understand that he's being sent to Washington, D.C. with a mandate this time. They know that they threw everything against him and that the American people are behind him. And what could be more scary for these nations knowing that we're actually going to go for it this time. But I think President Trump's already delivering, promises made, promises kept, and we need to keep this up and keep it going further.
Yeah, no doubt. It was shocking when this came down to some people, I'm sure, just because of what Trump said, or what Todd said. I just called you Trump. Oh, my goodness. Sure. He just made you the president of the United States. He's not even in office yet, and he's already talking to the leaders and says that he solved problems. The president of Mexico posted on X that she spoke with Trump over the phone and discussed strengthening collaboration on security issues, and that the conversation was excellent. So more to come on that front. Speaking of the former president, he recently posted his Thanksgiving message on X. This is what he said just a few hours ago. Happy Thanksgiving to all, including the radical left lunatics who have worked so hard to destroy our country, but who have miserably failed and will always fail because their ideas and policies are so hopelessly bad. Well, he's acting on those words because, according to the Washington Post, the president-elect's advisors are discussing ways to strip federal resources from Chicago and other Democrat-run cities if they refuse to participate in deportation of undocumented illegal immigrants next year. Mayor Brandon Johnson out of Chicago already responded, saying Chicago will not be intimidated. So it looks like, as the Washington Post says, that we're headed for a showdown. How does this go?
Well, I think we all know who wins these battles between the federal government and the states. It's going to be the federal government. These cities like Chicago and like Denver and like Los Angeles, they've all become way too dependent on federal assistance. And so Donald Trump is exactly right here, forcing them to choose between importing all the criminals and illegal immigrants they want and the federal dollars. You've got to uphold federal law if you're going to be in this country. You can't break the law. We heard for so long, guys, that no one's above the law for the last.
This is why the Democrat may lose in 2028, 2032, because they never listen to the people. They just never listen to the people. People who are in the chat saying they want to see the reply from the president of Mexico. Here we go. This is what she replied. She said she didn't say that she was going to close the border.
A dispute between the president-elect of the U.S. and Mexico's president over a phone call. Who agreed to what and what it may mean for the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Donald Trump brought out some of his best words, for example, wonderful, to describe a conversation with Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, ending his Truth Social post by claiming she agreed to, quote, stop migration through Mexico and into the United States. Sheinbaum actually just responded moments ago, and the short version is never, no, not once, did she say anything of the kind. Sheinbaum on X was writing, we reiterate that Mexico's position is not to close borders, but to build bridges between governments and between peoples. Joining us in our fifth seat, CNN media correspondent Hadass Gold. But first, we're going to go to Lance on this breaking news because it does kind of feel familiar from Trump 45. These initial kind of back and forth phone calls, interactions with other world leaders that sort of we hear one version of it and then we hear another version of it.
Yeah, I think the big difference is Donald Trump has got a pretty big mandate, particularly when it comes to this border and getting fentanyl under control in this country. So that, to me, is the big difference from 2017. And I don't think that any country, Mexico especially, should underestimate Americans' tolerance for when it comes to getting the border under control and to getting fentanyl under control. I can remember being on the campaign trail. You meet families who have they've lost children to this fentanyl. It is an epidemic across this country. And look, if you look back at the polling, the border was the number 2 issue consistently in every single poll. Donald Trump was leading.
But this isn't a debate here about whether or not it needs to be done. It's him telling a world leader, telling us that a world leader said it was going to be closed. You probably remember this from the first round of Trump, right? Where we would find out There was a very beautiful phone call, and maybe we'd hear another version of the call.
And one thing that always stuck out to me in those years was hearing from the reporters who covered Trump. I think Maggie Haberman said this well. Whenever she was reporting on something that happened in Trump world, she would sort of take what everybody would say and almost put it through a cheesecloth and try to get through the truth of what came out of that, the sort of what was alike in all of those statements, to try to get to the truth. Because often we would hear of these differing sort of statements from different world leaders, from what the president would say, from what the world leaders would say. And that was sort of the difficulty in covering Trump, but also made it a bit more, I guess, chaotic and exciting in certain ways.
So also fascinating that Sheinbaum, who's a relatively new leader, used X.
Yeah, when I first read this earlier this evening, I was hoping it was true, right? I was hoping that all these things that were in there, fentanyl and a great relationship with the Mexico president, but history's a great predictor of the future. And Donald Trump does this too often. He splashes magic pixie dust on the page, and it really doesn't come to be true. And we need to take this serious. This mandate from the voters was, we've got to take the border serious. But I really look at this as a two-pronged issue. We can't just take the border seriously without talking about immigration. Right? I just don't think we can have that honest conversation. And if Donald Trump just hones this moment and he focuses in on trying to figure out where those illegal folks that are here, that are committing crimes, where they're at, then we can actually have a substantive conversation. But instead, he's just going to gallivant around and act like he's playing global pit boss.
Anyone else?
No, I think that that's true. And Trump is trying to rule with a stick and not a carrot. And we've seen this time and time again. He is out here trying to strong arm a leader, particularly a female leader. And he is known for saying things that, quite frankly, are not true. We'll never see the transcript of that call. We'll never, you can say it's he said, she said, but we've seen time and time again where Trump will say something that happened in a call that is absolutely not true about that call. What we know from Mexico is that, quite frankly, they have not been good faith partners when it comes to immigration reform or reductions at the border or being honest about the fentanyl crisis or the caravans or anything else. Like, they have just not been helpful. But I do think that with this, with Donald Trump being president again, he has the opportunity to try to bridge some of this. He has the opportunity to be honest, not like he was about the border wall, which he said that they agreed to pay for and they didn't do that either. He has the opportunity to actually work and ensure that we do get to some resolution. But honestly, this is going to come from Congress as well. When we talk about the crime, we have to be honest about the fact that a lot of the crime stats that Donald Trump has pushed out in the Republican Party have, quite frankly, been lies. The numbers aren't nearly as big as he would like to say that they are. And when we talk about the fentanyl crisis, we have to be honest that a lot of Americans are driving the fentanyl crisis, not people across the border.
But I think the thing that's intriguing me is you have two new leaders, and you have a world that is far more sort of familiar with the tactics of a Donald Trump, right? Like, now you know, if you go into a room with him, what you can or should do after you leave that room if you're another world leader.
All of these leaders negotiate through media to some degree. So we should separate the public statements from what's probably going on behind the scenes. They may be testing each other to see how they react to Trump's characterization of the meeting, because that's a sign of whether his leverage is working behind the scenes. So I don't think you should read too much into these public statements, because at the end of the day, this is just a negotiation. It's brinkmanship.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, no one was on this phone call, so no one knows exactly what happened. But that, to my original point, the one thing he comes in with is, to me, a lot more of a mandate. And I just think the folks in Mexico need to be thinking long and hard about what he's willing to do, especially as somebody who doesn't have to run for office.
She has her own mandate, right? Those are the dynamics we don't know anything about.
Absolutely. I get it. She needs to talk tough. But I mean, I think this is an issue where the American people are lock solid, and they're
the Americans that voted for him in the middle are expecting him to do something, not just build 20 miles of a wall for a selfie station.
Bakari, I mean, it was interesting when Trump came out with that post. He made it sound as though he had solved the immigration crisis and what's happening down at the border. And the president of Mexico had a very different characterization.
Yeah, and I just think that this is going to be somewhat typical of the next 4 years of the Trump administration. It's something that we see on X a lot, which has really become this kind of very, very, in terms of intellectual honesty, very shallow. But President Sheinbaum, in her response, ran circles around the incoming 47th president of the United States, talking about the agreements that Mexico has already made and the reduction that we've seen of border crossings and the things they're already doing. And she's going to be more than a formidable foe for Donald Trump. But I would tell people who are watching, and sometimes we don't do this, but Donald Trump is going to claim credit and then send a tweet out without actually doing anything and claiming some victories or success. that is who he is, and that's who he's always been. He has not solved anything yet, although he's claimed victory. And so this is going to be something that's happening, and this is why journalism matters, and people like
I don't understand why Americans would be supporting other countries rather than supporting the United States. He's saying she's going to be more than a formidable foe. And before this video started, the other lady said on CNN, she said that the president of Mexico has a mandate as well. So wait, are you supposed to be concerned about the mandate of the Mexican president, or you should be concerned and rooting for the president of the United States mandate? Same guy right here saying she's gonna be a formidable foe. Is that that means you hoping and praying and wishing that the president of the United States, President-elect Donald Trump, messes up.
you matter, Jim, because you're going to have to turn the page and be able to show people that, look, I mean, just because you tweet it and say it doesn't mean anything. I tweet the fact that I should be in the NBA all the time, but I ain't there.
Yeah, I would love that too. I would love to be in the NBA. But Scott, let me ask you, does this mean that if we start to see, migration coming across the border during a second Trump term, that means that this tweet from him this post is no longer operative? What does that mean? Does that mean he didn't solve it or she didn't solve it? What does that mean?
I'll tell you what this whole thing means to me. First of all, it was interesting to hear Bakari describe the president of Mexico as a formidable foe. I don't think we ought to have to think of Mexico as a foe, although we currently should, because they've been a terrible neighbor. And I think he got her attention this week with his threat of tariffs. And she clearly hopped on the phone with him. And that's a good thing. She needs to pay attention to Donald Trump. And they need to pay attention to the United States. They have an important economic relationship with us, but they've been a terrible neighbor. And they do need to do more in terms of migration and drugs. This poison comes across the border. It kills Americans. And so I'm glad they talked. And I know that they're both doing their own public posturing for their own political purposes. But they have an important role to play. And I don't think they've done near enough to do what they can do to help the United States solve this crisis. So we'll see how it turns out. But there's a lot of things yet to happen. Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and he's already got the attention of both Mexico and Canada in a way that I don't think Joe Biden ever did.
But Lee, I guess, Bakari, if you want a quick response to that.
Oh, it's Lee's show. I think that irresponsible fiscal policy is something that we'll be able to discuss for a long period of time. If anybody thinks 25% tariffs on anything is good policy, and yes, she is a formidable foe. It's a colloquialism that means somebody who's going to be able to go back and forth with the president of the United States, not any type of other characterization. But Scott knows that.
And Leah, I guess just to go back to you finally on this. I mean, the flip side of this is that when Trump comes into office, if these tariffs do go into effect, I mean, the president of Mexico has threatened to retaliate. We could have a trade war at the beginning of this new administration, which could have a pretty serious effect on inflation in this country. And that's what a lot of economic experts are saying right now. What do you think?
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is a little bit of saber rattling and a little bit of, I think, to Scott and Bakari's point, is a little bit of posturing. And that the ultimate outcome is that nobody really wants a trade war. Nobody wants a tariff war. Nobody wants to be, clearly the American public was very open and very transparent that they are tired of really high inflation. And that also includes inflation that went into effect roughly around 2019 from earlier tariffs that were put into place that the Biden administration didn't overturn, but also contributed and gotten worse due to the global pandemic. So I honestly think that part of what this is designed to do is to create, a leverage moment, a moment of negotiation. And they're putting the cards on the table before Donald Trump has even gotten into office. What I would really be curious to see ultimately is where the negotiation ends up. In large part because Donald Trump does not want massive inflation. He just doesn't. It's not a politically good thing. It's also economically not a good thing. So what does the actual break?
She's right. She's right. However, it's like we should support the president-elect. Nobody should be going back and forth saying other countries are more important. I mean, I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying that the United States should be first for any American citizen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. All right. It is Thanksgiving. Thank you for tuning in. You could be with your family right now enjoying your Thanksgiving turkey and dish and mac and cheese and all that stuff, but you're here with me enjoying the show. God bless you. Double tap your screen to give this video a like. And let's do this one more so we can go back to our families and have a good time, okay?
If you are one of the tens of millions of people hitting the skies this Thanksgiving, you may have noticed it's costing a bit more. Domestic airfares are averaging near $284. That's up 9% from the same time last year. That's according to travel booking platform Hopper. Now, the news doesn't get much better if you're heading overseas, because ticket prices to popular destinations in Europe have also jumped about 20% from Thanksgiving 2023. Joining us now is travel expert Brian Kelly. He is the founder of thepointsguy.com. Brian, great to have you on this day. Let's start with points. So many people, if they have not already traveled, they will be traveling in the weeks to come. How do people use loyalty programs to try to save money this holiday season?
Yeah, points are the key. You know, the airlines gouge last minute travelers when it comes to fare prices, but you'd be shocked at how much award availability there is. So my number one tip is always make sure to check award availability. Right before this segment, point.me is a website that'll actually check multiple airlines for the dates you want to go. So if you've got credit card points with lots of different transfer partners, Point.me will actually show you what's available. And they just sent me a bunch of deals. You can go for New Year's this year, Chicago to Nassau, New York to Bermuda, and even Europe. And if you want to actually buy flights, I highly recommend Google Flights. So google.com/flights, they have an explore button, and you can put in your home city and then put in Caribbean or put in Europe, and it'll pull all fares to that entire continent or region.
Yeah, New York to Bermuda sounds really nice right about now. Talk to me a little bit about the pitfalls, though, of using points. I mean, there are, of course, personal finance experts who warn that chasing points also encourages people to buy on credit.
Yeah, so using points is incredible for consumers because you can cancel and get your points back for free in most major programs. Unlike airlines, which will give you a voucher maybe and have change fees, using points is like buying a fully refundable ticket. So that's what I can't stress to people enough. Even if you're at the airport and your flight's getting delayed and you might be canceled and you've got to get home, pull out your points, book yourself on another carrier. Even if you don't end up needing to use that flight, you can cancel and get all of your points back for free. But to your point, never spend on a credit card if you can't pay it off in full every month, because the interest you pay will negate the value of any of the points that you earn.
Is there a good rule of thumb, Brian, about when the best time is to buy travel tickets? I feel like every time I'm looking to buy a flight, I wonder, wait, when am I supposed to buy it again? Like, what is that time frame? What's a good rule of thumb?
A good rule of thumb is 4 to 6 weeks prior for domestic, and basically 2 to 3 months and prior for international. Now note, the airlines will take advantage of you if you want to book a year in advance. They charge a premium, but most airlines will release frequent flyer mile awards for most of their flights at 11 months or so in advance. So if you can plan a year in advance and have miles, book as soon as the calendar opens up for that airline. That's how a lot of people in the points and miles world will snag those really hard to get tickets, like to the Maldives or Hawaii.
Oh, okay, Brian Kelly, great advice. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
See, the issue is when you want to buy your tickets like 11 months in advance like me, but your husband wants to buy it the week before the trip. That's where the issue is.
A push and pull,
yes, for sure. Well,
back now with our national lead, today's big travel questions. Will you or your guests make it on time for Thanksgiving dinner? And just how will the weather impact those plans? First, let's tackle the travel. New numbers from the TSA show this week is on track to break records for those flying to their holiday destinations. CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean has a front row seat to the masses at Reagan National Airport just outside of Washington, D.C. So, Pete, give me a sense. How many more people are flying this year?
We're up about 2% from what we saw last year. And remember, there was year after year of increases from the depths of the pandemic. These numbers are the biggest we have ever seen in TSA history. Really continues the theme. The TSA says its top 10.
Are you guys traveling, or did you travel for Thanksgiving, or what is the deal? What is the deal? I am home in Georgia with my family. And I got to go to the hospital now because my family member is in the hospital. So they're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving in the hospital. But before that, I got to take my daughter to somewhere nice. And so she can have a good time. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Thank you for tuning into the live show. What else do we have right here? Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. We have right here. And it is. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we may be ending the live stream with this guy right here. And this is about how Biden's team are actually collaborating with the incoming president elect Trump and how they're working together, hopefully together, to make everything seamless.
Keith Kellogg to join his cabinet with a focus on the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump writing, quote, "I am very pleased to nominate General Keith Kellogg to serve as assistant to the president and special envoy for Ukraine and Russia. Together, we will secure peace through strength and make America and the world safe again." Don Bramer is a former intelligence officer, Iraq veteran, and the founder and chairman of the Bramer Group, and he joins me now. Don, good morning to you. So what do you think about General Kellogg being tapped to lead this newly formed role?
Well, I congratulate General Kellogg on this role, and I think he'll do a splendid job. You know, he's highly decorated, highly respected in both military and intelligence circles, and this is the kind of strategic thinker that we need to put an end to these costly wars, especially the Ukraine conflict, that America keeps writing a blank check for, with the president asking for yet another $24 billion just this week as he heads out the door.
So here's some insight on how General Kellogg thinks about how to end this war. He writes in his strategy papers, the United States would continue to arm Ukraine and strengthen its defenses to ensure Russia will make no further advances and will not attack again after a ceasefire or peace agreement. Further American military aid, however, will require Ukraine to participate in peace talks with Russia. So apparently he's thinking arm up Ukraine, but get both sides to the negotiating table by, he also says, putting NATO membership on hold. What do you think about that?
I think the membership to NATO, while it would be something that Ukraine really wants, it would send a very contentious signal to Putin and to Russia right now. You know, it would prevent us from going to the negotiation table. And I think right now that in order to put an end to this, we need to show that the West and the United States will support Ukraine, but both sides have to sit down at the table and realize that there has to be a place in the middle where they can meet. This war is exhausting the population of Ukraine. It's exhausting the population of Russia. Russia's now having to bring in troops from other countries. So we have to put an end to it, and I think sitting at the table that first time is exactly what it's going to take, and find out where they can find that common ground.
There's another war to talk about, and the Biden administration is working with the Trump transition team to restore peace in the Middle East as they both try to hammer out an Israel-Hamas ceasefire before the new administration takes office.
It is Thanksgiving. We don't want to talk about chaos, so it is what it is. Shout out to Ukrainians, shout out to Russians. Let them settle their scores, and hopefully, you know, the incoming president is going to make a deal and make sure there's peace. With that being said, we want peace everywhere so the inflation worldwide can actually go down, as well as the United States, and let these deals just go as great as it can, because this guy's mandate is secure the border, make sure there's peace around the world, which is foreign policies, and make sure the economy bounces back. It is what it is. Shout out to Trump, shout out to his team, and shout out to everybody watching the live stream right now. Shout out to Average Joe. Average Joe is watching on the horizontal stream. God bless you, Average Joe. Zach on the horizontal stream. Denise is on the horizontal stream. Yes. So on the vertical stream, we have a bunch of people. So veterans in the chat. Thank you to everybody tuning in. It is what it is. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Happy Thanksgiving from me to you and your beautiful family. Have a wonderful day. It is what it is. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams, and never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in God. Yes, that's my daughter saying.
And subscribe to the channel like twice.
Mhm.
Subscribe to the channel twice.
Subscribe to the channel.
Twice.
She says subscribe to the channel twice. You know, we know what time it is. You want to say Happy Thanksgiving? All right, tell them Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All
Happy
right.
Thanksgiving to my daddy.
Happy Thanksgiving to my baby.
And happy Thanksgiving to Daddy's movie.